Let's talk about order of operations. Order of operations is something that many people continue to have difficulty with when solving math. I'm going to try to simplify it in such a way, hopefully, that you won't have too much difficulty with it. So the first thing I want to talk about is what are operations. So when we think of operations, let's think about what we learned in elementary school. So let's just write down operations. So what do we have? We have addition. So we mark that with a plus. So we're going to think about that as like A plus A plus A. That would be addition. What undoes addition is the inverse operation, which is subtraction, which we mark, which is the minus sign. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Then later we learn multiplication. And when we were in elementary school, we used an X, but I don't want to use an X. We'll use parentheses. Or if we have something like the 3 right next to the A, this is 3 times A. 3 times A is the same thing as A plus A plus A. That's A 3 times. So multiplication is actually a shortcut of repeated addition. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So there are many division signs. There's this one. There's this one, and then there's our fraction bar. The one that we'll be using the most in algebra is the fraction bar, though we won't be doing it on a slant. I'm just showing you that to avoid confusion. Then the next one, I'm going to give you a big word, exponentiation. But the only thing that we need to realize with that is just exponents. Okay, so the word exponent is an exponentiation. And that's something like a to the third or even a to the 1/2 power. Now a lot of people are a little confused. Well, what would be the inverse operation of exponentiation? I'm just going to say radicals. Okay, so anytime we take the root of something, we're undoing the exponent. For example, the square root of A or the cubed root of A. So those are our 6 operations that we often talk about. So this is different than order of operations. These are just operations. So I'm going to go ahead and box those in so that you can see each clearly as such. So let's go ahead and talk now about the order of operations. So many people know the order operations with this mnemonic, PEMDAS. Okay, but let's just talk about what each one is. So the first one, the P, is parenthesis. So I'm going to write that down. The parenthesis. And we can think of that as something like 2x plus 5. But we can also think of this as a grouping. So our radical, any radical, is also a grouping. So this radical here is acting as a grouping, just as our parentheses is acting as a grouping. And even division can act as a grouping. So you need to recognize all of those things as grouping. And in fact, I don't use the word parentheses because that's a radical and that's a division line. I think of this as anything that does grouping. So instead of a P, I use a G for GEMDAS. Okay, so then let's look at some other things. What do we have? We have the next is our E, which are exponents. So that's something like A cubed or A plus B squared. Okay, and we can even think of this as the square root of 4A. So you may be saying to me, well, wait a minute, that's a radical, that's not an exponent. In fact, it is, and as we get further into algebra, we'll see that this can be written as 4A to the 1/2 power. So here it's written as an exponent. So radicals are really exponents in disguise. I want you to realize that if we were to expand this, this is A times A times A. If we were to expand this, this is A plus B times A plus B. Those are very important concepts that you'll need to keep in mind as we progress. Then the last two, or excuse me, 4, multiplication, division. Okay, those kind of go together. And then we have addition and subtraction. So that's the basics of what you need to know about the order of operations, and we'll look in the next video on simplifying expressions.